occasion. Thank you so much, ma'am. I take this privilege to introduce Professor Thenmozhi. She is a professor and head of Department of Management Studies of IIT Madras, Chennai, with more than 32 years of academic experience. She has also been the director of National Institute of Securities Markets, Mumbai. Prior to joining IIT Madras, she was working as a faculty in Management Division of the Department of Industrial Engineering and Management at Anna University, Chennai. She has been ranked in top 100 women in finance in India in 2019 and 2020 by AIWMA. She is an Executive Endeavour Fellow 2007 of Australian Government and a recipient of Fulbright Nehru Visiting Lecturer Fellowship in 2011 and European Union Erasmus Mundus Scholarship 2009. She is a National Award winner 2003 for developing the best manufacturing policy draft for India, and the award was given by the former Prime Minister Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee in the National Manufacturing Sector Policy Competition organized by Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industries, and We Think of India WTI Forum. She is a recipient of Exim Bank Chair Professorship 2016 in Finance offered by Indian Council of Cultural Relations, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. She has international teaching research experience with Queensland University of Technology in 2007, Australia, uh, Spain, University of Paso in 2010, Germany, San Diego State University in 2011, USA, and Lagos Business School in 2016, Nigeria. She has guided 2 postdocs, 17 PhD, and 9 MS scholars, and has published more than 30 papers in international journals and 51 in national journals, and has more than 110 international conference papers and 48 national conference papers. She has published papers in journals like Pacific Basin Journal of Finance, Emerging Market Review, Research in International Business and Finance, Neural Computing and Applications, Management Decision, International Journal of Banking, Accounting, and many other very reputed journals nationally and internationally. She specializes in applied and policy implications based on research in the domain of corporate finance, market, microstructure, and financial time series modeling. She has developed hybrid AI and support vector machine-based forecasting models for stock market trading and investing models to test information transmission between markets, determinants of ETFs, performance, commodity market, price discovery, impact of family and promoter driven firms, government and country level determinants of FDI and cross border acquisitions. She has won several Best Research Awards for her research work both at national and international levels. She has executed sponsored projects for CTS, TCS, National Stock Exchange, Multi Commodity Exchange of India, and many more to name a few. On this forum, she has developed e-learning modules in WebCT, AutoWare, Professional, and NPTEL. We are very honored to have you with us, ma'am. Over to you. Thank you. Namaskar.
My pleasure to take part in this FDP and share my thoughts today with you all. I'll just share my screen. So can you see my screen?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Yeah, okay. So just trying to focus on how to prepare research proposals for government institutions and other funding agencies. I think it's always a challenge trying to see in terms of how do we get my project proposal clear through the funding agency and getting some grants. And in recent times, it is getting a lot of importance also because many faculty members have now developed interest not only to pursue PhD, but also after that, they also are more keen to look at in terms of can I get some funding for my projects? And the most important reason why we look into funding is not just to get a fund, but it also helps us to do some good high quality research also. So in that sense, I think it's very important that I think many of you would have already tried applying for projects, but let me share some of my thoughts on this today with you. I think when it comes to research, why we do it, I think as you all of, I will always say that most important thing is, yes, we want to build a knowledge. So whether it's for funding purposes or for the purpose of trying to do research for our own satisfaction, I think we look at it in terms of, can I build my knowledge? And when it comes to knowledge, maybe either we are adding to the theoretical, trying to look in terms of strengthening our theoretical knowledge or the base of ensuring that we get a good foundation on the various aspects irrespective of the area in which you specialize. I am basically specializing in the area of finance, so many of them will be related to that, but I think you can always generalize it to the other areas which you will be working on also. So one is we always try to see, are we trying to contribute to theory and can I try to do something more? But I always look in terms of sometimes can we develop our own theories? Most of the time we try to look at in terms of theories already established and then try to see in terms of providing justification of whether it's valid or not valid. But emerging markets like India, I think we have different experiences, different environment, and I hope that many of you doing pursuing research will try to come up with developing a new theory in whatever domain that you're going to work on. I think what's more important is we must come up with something new, which is more appropriate for our own systems also, rather than just trying to follow what others have said. I'm not questioning that, but they have provided a base. But then it's also important for us also to see that our markets are different, our economy is different, and then now we should focus on trying to develop our own theories which are more relevant for the systems that are existing here today. Another important one is a theoretical knowledge building. Another one I feel is we need to look at in terms of there will be a practical also. No point in doing research for the purpose of showing the numbers or getting the quant part of it. I think many of us sometimes feel that it is just put it in my resume or put it in my records. But I think what is more important is that based on the research that we do, can we bring in some implication? I've seen that many of you have been doing good research and then trying to see in terms of sometimes the government also takes up the reports and then makes use of it. And sometimes companies can also make use of it. So we have to see in terms of, can I pursue research which will also ensure that it will be more practical, it will be more relevant, it can be applied. It will be, and I think if someone is going to implement, take certain decisions based on your research, I think the joy that you get is immense. So it is important that whatever we do should have some relevance. Apart from getting the quants that you're looking in for, I would recommend that try to see, even whatever you're doing, at least later on, try to communicate to the organizations or people who may be willing to apply it. Or as part of your research also, I think it's important that we try to ensure that we can try to see whether it is really relevant or what are the issues in implementing it. Sometimes it's easy to recommend, to take up certain actions, but it's not that very easy to practice it all the time. So it's also important as researchers, we also need to understand what are the real implications of implementing the decisions coming out of the research also. So in that sense, I think is one is practical contributions. Right? And of course, in recent times, I see a lot of research happening where we are trying to look at in terms of what is the impact of a policy. And I think there are different regulations, different regulators come up with different types of new changes based on the requirements of the industry and the economy. And I think research is happening where we try to see whether there will be policies effective. See, we'd like to know in terms of, okay, if something is being introduced, whether it's really bringing in the impact. So, for example, people come up with several regulations or guidelines. And the ultimate reason is to ensure that the process should be smoother, and at the same time, it should also protect the interests of the people or the stakeholders. So we can also try to look at the impact. Another thing I would recommend that many of you to look at is, can I come up with doing a research which will lead to a policy regulation? The outcome of your study should force or make the regulators coming up with a guideline or a policy so that the things become much more better. I think that's the type of research that one can also look at also. Because apart from knowledge, I always see that over a period of time, gradually each one of you become an expert in one particular area. So when we start, I still remember when I started, started working on initially on capital markets, and then slowly trying to understand the stock market, and then later on, having done some work in the area of stock market, I found that another thing which is emerging is the bond market. So I thought, let me look at in terms of what's happening in the bond market. And again, bond market, it's both corporate bond market and the government bond market is there. So sometimes I was not very familiar with them. I started trying to understand how the market functions, what are the issues, what are challenges that are there. And then once after that, like I did start to see derivatives is also was coming up in a big way. Then I started looking at it. I think one work which I started with it for the MSc is trying to see whether the purpose of which we introduce derivatives is providing an opportunity for the speculators to move from the spot market to the derivatives market. So I want to see whether has it really happened, has it really reduced the volatility in the spot, and that's how I began my most of my empirical work in the stock market, looking in terms of the effect of introduction of derivatives on the spot market. Then I started looking at market returns, volatility, portfolios, etc. But then after some time, I did find that a lot of things are emerging in the area of commodities market. So when I started looking at terms of doing some research in commodities market. So I think the moment maybe I will also see that I was also growing with the developments that are happening in the market also. So by way of trying to look at in terms of what are the changes that are happening, and I also started trying to experiment and explore how the market is, what are the issues that can be looked upon, and what are the challenges, and can I provide some answers for some of the questions which I thought we can do it in the Indian context. But of course, over a period of time, I also looked at in terms of applying neural network models, forecasting, prediction, and I did explore in those areas because I found that there is a need. Maybe 20 years back, I think I started working on applying neural network to predict stock market. But now AI is the thing in everything. Almost every domain, people are talking about AI. But at that time, when I was looking at I think it began with the MBA project where I started looking at can we use neural network for predicting the stock market? And I still remember when I did that particular project with a student, it was really exciting because I didn't know most of the things at that point in time. And I started trying to understand what it is. And after developing a model, I did call a real trader in the market to come and give a feedback on the project that they've done. Can you just guess what the trader told me after seeing the project? So what happened? What he said is that no, ma'am, all these things doesn't work. You cannot come up with these type of things. It's all more to do with the intuition of the trader, and then that's how the trading happens. So these models are irrelevant. So I was a little taken aback at that point in time. But still now, I think we'll see that we have the algo trading models that are existing now, and people are talking in terms more about how we can use AI for different applications. So 20 years back, I started my journey in those areas at that point in time. And gradually, of course, it also helped me to look at in terms of trying to see how this AI model can be used for different purposes. And I did develop some hybrid models also. I was thinking not only linear models, but also apart from neural network. We did do some work in trying to see whether support vector machines can be used. Is it better than neural network? Then we came up with some both linear and non-linear hybrid models, which can be used for the purpose of prediction, and then started working on it. So I think, each one of you, I think when you start your journey in research, I'm sure that you begin with something and gradually keep building on yourself. And then over a period of time, I'm sure that each and every can be an expert, because I always feel that you must keep continuously working in those areas. Sometimes I see people say they're shifting from one topic to another topic. I think you start working more in one particular area, go in depth into it, so that it's always better that you become an expert. And that helps you to come up with identifying what are the key issues that are there, what challenges are there, and what type of research we can do also. So when you're going to prepare a proposal, I think if you have that foundation and background, I'm sure that you'll be able to come up with a very good proposal which nobody can say no to it. Or even if the proposal is not coming, I'm sure that when you execute it, the research will be more appreciated. And another thing which I always feel is people think research is different from that of teaching, but I always consider that research has always helped me also to be a better teacher. Because the way in which you start looking at things and understanding things changes the more and more you work in a particular area. And when when you go to the class, I think we are able to give a lot of practical examples and then also try to provide evidence of certain things. So I think each one of you should always see that research is not something separate of teaching. It is going to aid and improve your teaching. And I think organizations or the colleges and the universities, I should definitely encourage faculty to do more and more research because that helps them to have develop the teachers much better. And of course, the most important thing is when you're doing research, I'm sure that you're trying to contribute to the literature, or we are trying to see in terms how we can contribute to the industry, the state, and the society. So even when you're going to prepare a proposal, I think the most important thing that the component that normally people ask is in the proposal is what is the expected outcome and how it will be useful. So when you are preparing a proposal, I think you also need to look at in terms of, okay, am I contributing to existing theory and what theory? Is it going to be in terms of corporate finance or is it in terms of ownership or is it going to be in relation to the price discovery or market microstructure? What is the area in which I am going to contribute there? Is something new in addition to what is there? And again, to the sectors and the industries in which you are looking specifically, or to the country, or to the society also. So I think if we can bring out the expected outcome, how it will be useful, I think it makes a lot of sense. People will also try to understand the significance and importance of your proposal. So I always say that there's a quality of teaching and research. There's always a linkage, and I think as a faculty, I think we must understand that teaching and research are complementary, and it's very important. And maybe we can think in terms of depending on the level at which we are, how much of time are you going to spend on teaching, research, and administration. So I think we say, okay, this is the plan that I'm going to have. You be clear about it. Once you're clear about it, you find a way of doing it. Otherwise, what happens is we tend to keep doing one thing, and then later on we start finding, when we look back, we find that we have not done what we really wanted to do. So when I look back, of course, I didn't really plan it out, but I always ensure that, okay, I must have something. There sometimes when you look at a performance report that you give at the end of the year, there are different components at there. What you've done for teaching, what courses you've taught, what in research, what you've done, in projects, what you've done, training, what you've done, and the societal impact, what you've done. So many components are there. So I used to think that next every year, I must have at least one thing in each of these. That's my goal. But then I think that really helped me to keep moving forward, because now when I look back, I think that's how I think I have built up over a period of time also. So it's all for you to decide what will work for you, and if you can plan it, I'm sure that each one of you will be able to devote your time. Because most important thing in doing good quality research is that we need to devote time, and research doesn't happen by itself, and it's more like an individual journey. And unless and until we are really keen about it, we are really strong about it, it will not move. It's just going to be there as it is. So at least in terms of teaching, there is a timetable and there's a pressure, and then you just go and then try to take a class. But then when it comes to research, I think we give the least priority. Sometimes administrative work also takes priority over research also. But still, you need to find the time for your research. You try to see what will be the best time at which I can do some research. Devote some time, develop that as a habit, and then after some time, you'll find that it becomes a habit for yourself. See, what matters is research and publication sometimes. Nowadays, I think people are looking in terms of participating in ranking and rating, and as well as in terms of trying to compete with the other institutions. We want to benchmark themselves. So most important thing is people looking at the institutional reputation based on the research productivity, Another thing is, of course, the faculty. As a faculty, I think you'll all be sure now your organization will always be looking in terms of what is your contribution in terms of research, and that will play a significant role in your taking up higher level positions also then. And of course, most important thing is, how are you going to contribute to knowledge and society? So I think in this sense, I think as faculty members, it's important that we focus on research, and also not only that do research, but we publish them also. Because no point in doing research and just keeping it in our laptops nowadays. I think it's important that we try to disseminate this knowledge, and so that others also come to know what you have done. So and it's going to be useful. I think when it comes to preparing research proposals, I just try to list out some of the organizations which call for research proposals. Some of them commonly which you would have applied. One is the UGC, University Grants Commission, also comes up with different requests for corporate proposals. Indian Council for Social Science Research, AACT is also coming up with different types of proposals. DST also comes up with it. Then SERB is there. Then the Principal Science Advisory Office nowadays invites a lot of proposals. And then CSR projects. Maybe I'll just spend a few minutes on each one of these now. I'll just here. Sorry. I think this is the, sorry, you just see. Can you see the screen?
We can see. Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Yeah. Even this UGC scheme, I think there are two things are there. One is research grant for in-service faculty members, and then fellowship for superannuated faculty members. So I think this is the first thing which many of you will be looking at here. See, faculty members regularly appointed institutions, universities there, age up to 50 years. And of course, they would have at least supervised a few theses, and then applicants should have completed 2 years as projects. So there are some requirements are there. So maybe when you look at any call for proposal, first look at in terms of what is the requirement. I think these are the things that are currently there, but then as you see over a period of time, they come up with new different types of proposals also to call for them. So first thing is understand why you're fulfilling the eligibility requirements. And if you're fulfilling the eligibility requirements, think in terms of how you can try to apply there again. I'm sorry. See, we also give you the guidelines also. So most important thing is apart from the eligibility, the tenure, because they're saying that type of financial assistance, and you must look at, of course, the process is there, and then we also come up with the form. Maybe you can look at it. I think the application form is not there. I think it is online, basically what you look at. So maybe look at in terms of research grant for faculty members. This is one thing which you can look at. And this is an older one, but maybe we are looking at in terms of new things also. Fellowship for superannuated faculty members is there. So just trying to see some of the recent ones. Maybe this is something those who are superannuating and still you can do also. So there's no end to it, you know. It's up to for 67 years they are willing to give you a funding for doing some projects. So they also call for different R&D projects sometimes, and they also give you come up with calls for some development of a lab. So different types of requirements come in, but you need to look at in terms of what is that is there in this terms of fellowships and the research grants that are there existing at any point in time. And I'm sure that you'll be able to look at it. I think this is with respect to UGC, then I will take going for ICS. Yeah. This is the most important. ICS, Indian Council for Social Science and Research. I think it's a good thing for you to look at, and I found that we also the most successful in this. They have two things. One is major project and a minor project is there. So there is, they call for a special call for short-term and empirical research projects are there. And they also indicate what are the disciplines or domains on which they want it. And as you see, major project is for 12 months, 24 months, the budget of 5 to 15 lakhs. Minor project is 6 to 12 months, the budget of 5 lakhs. So I think this is a good avenue which all of you can explore and look at in terms of trying to send a proposal here. Maybe you can do it either on your own, or you can also take the collaboration of any of your other colleagues also, partner with them, and then try to come up with a solid proposal. And they also come up with what is required here. There's an application format. Look at it first, try to look in terms of what are the various things, and then prepare a part. See, and most important is you must fill all the details that is required in the application. It should be appropriate. I think that's the most important thing. And then, of course, periodically they review the projects and then they try to release the funds here. Yeah. And of course, when you're preparing a budget, they also give what should be the various heads on it and how much you can spend on each category. So you can prepare the budget in terms of these heads. So sometimes ICSS stipulates certain things. I think each and every funding institutions come up with their own requirements. So you may have to ensure that you try to fulfill the requirements and then try to execute it accordingly once you get it. But so when you're preparing your proposal itself, you need to ensure that you try to abide by it. Because if it's not as per the format, that itself will become a reason for not being considered. So please do to go to the, and in terms of you employing any research associate, they also come up with certain stipulation which you need to follow also here. And of course, they also release the grants and stages that is there. So this is actually a very good opportunity for faculty to try. But sometimes it's quite, people say that initially, don't worry even if you apply and you don't get it. Try to see if there is any call for research in a particular area, then if you can come up with that theme, I'm sure it will always be more easy for you to get into research. So it's important that you look at in terms of the requirements. And I think as you see, the disciplines are very wide also. So you can also choose in which discipline you would like to apply and in which category. And then please, always is important, you have to choose that properly so that it goes to the right domain. And then it will be processable. So I think between major and minor project, I think if you haven't tried for a project, don't look for the major, first try with the minor project. 5 lakhs is really a good amount because first you also get the experience of doing a project, and also you get to know what is the procedure and other things. And you have a satisfaction, yes, you did something and you got it. Yeah. So I will always say if you haven't applied earlier for the project, first try for the minor project and then later on going for the major project. Because sometimes the number of projects that they give for both the categories of major and minor are limited. So in this sense, I think the chances for you to get in the minor project is much more greater than that of getting your project, getting the funding for a major project. So this is Indian Council of Science and Social Science Research. I think this is one important source of funding for us. Of course, there are other projects also. Maybe I'll also look at in terms of this is in recent time, particularly if you are looking at something more technical also. I feel that we collaborate with some of the other people also, and then we can try to send some projects here. And SERB is also very good. For example, startup research grant projects are there. They also come up with some specific core research grant projects are there. So you can look at in terms of the schemes, what are eligible to, and then if there are any specific themes that they are looking for, then maybe you can look at that. And I found that many of them are successful in getting the SERB project here. So maybe I think this is something which you can look at. SERB is also a good avenue for you to look at projects. Then another one is DST is another important thing. I've always seen that Department of Science and Technology also provides funds for the various types of projects that you can do. I think R&D and technical consideration is there. There's something for science and improvement program. Of course, this is more for science and technology. There are some areas where you find that depending on your interest match in any of those things you're interested, I think you can apply for under this category. And they also have other schemes also. So it's more, and DST also, I think, normally I feel for DST, suppose you are from the commerce and finance or management discipline, and still you find that you may not fit into this one, I'll request you to collaborate with other science faculty also, and then try to see if we can do it together. And always a teamwork helps when you're applying for proposals to DST. And maybe it's always good also. Sometimes when you're sending this major proposals, it's always good to apply for the project as a team, and so that you can also share the responsibilities in the work also. So this is DST. I've also been many faculty members normally I find are successful in trying to apply and get projects under the DST. And one thing is they are regular. These are things which come regularly. Every year you find that they call for proposals. And right now these are so many of them are active. So you can look at these proposals and see what is relevant for you, what is your interest, and then this another thing is the AICT initiative. So AICT also comes up, All India Council of Technical Education also comes up with grants, particularly for management departments. So you find that the R&D scheme is there. So I think, yeah. Any questions?
Anybody has any questions? Please raise your hand. I don't think there are any questions at the moment. If we would, we will ask them again.
Then please do interrupt so that you can. IICT also gives you three different types of thing. One is this is something in the collaborative research scheme. R&D is there, trust area is there, and modernization of setting up of labs also. So maybe you can look at in terms of the options suitable for you, look at in terms of what are the schemes, what are the requirements, what information is required, and then try to apply. Then this. One more, I think it's missing. Yeah. So I think these are some of the things which I thought we can try to explore what is most suitable for you and then try to. But always, sometimes people feel first have to go into the role, it's a big work. Can I do it? I think the first thing is faculty feel is that one. But it's always tough, particularly each one will come up with a different format, but don't worry. Initially, it's like that because I've always seen that. First time, we are not that very comfortable with it. And then later on, once you start doing it, I think you will also know how to go about doing it. Also. It takes time. Maybe that is the reason why sometimes it's also good to do it collaboratively because you'll have someone to discuss with. So they discuss the idea, what to put in, one can do it, and then other one can give you feedback. And I always find that helps. But of course, if you don't find the collaborator, it's fine. You can do it on your own also. But it's important that you need to spend a lot of time to prepare. It's not that in one day you can prepare a proposal. And if you're doing a proposal in one day, I'm sure you'll never go through. So it's important you spend some adequate time. Look at all these probable ones that comes in and then start planning well in advance and see in terms of what will be required and then develop a proposal. Sometimes you will prepare well, since even if you don't get it, don't give up, try again with some other agencies. So sometimes depending on the call, sometimes we modify it and then that still doesn't work also because you find it's very competitive scenario. So that will not stop you from doing it. Even if you don't get the project, you do the work. You start doing the research. So for example, when I first presented the proposal for MSc at that time, I actually did some work. I did some preliminary work on what I wanted to do. Only then I had some clarity in terms of what I can research. So I started doing some literature survey. I did try to look at terms of what is the gap. And I'm sure that there is a gap there. Then I also came up with the bit of methodology. But still, of course, sometimes when you send the proposal, some of them only say yes or no. But there are certain organizations give you a feedback where you to revise a proposal. So when I submitted to National Stock Exchange, they asked me to revise my proposal also. They say the reviewers asked a lot of questions before funding. And then that also helped me to learn. So if you get any feedback on your work, it's good. It means that yes, somebody has gone through your proposal seriously and then take the feedback and try to see how to improve on. I think gradually we can always evolve. No researcher becomes a great researcher in a day. Everybody has grown over a period of time. So I'm sure that each one of you, when you aim for it, I'm sure that take the any feedbacks that you get very positively and then try to see in terms of how to. Now the principal scientific officer, I think this is also another one which I wanted to. Yeah, I can put it on show and then check it. See, science, they also come up, see, for example, if you look, many people think that using science, technology, innovation is only for these areas. There's also a category other areas. And if you find some issue that you have, which is really critical, so for example, you see evaluation socioeconomic consequences on early effective strategies of pandemic, webinars on COVID-19, risk management and simulation efforts, lockdown on. So people have submitted proposals here on the other areas of interest, and they find out a funder for your projects also. So we can come up with a focus area of what it is, and if they find is really significant, what this office does is they try to find out who will be interested in these things and then connect you with the funder also. I think this is really a remarkable thing, because sometimes we want to do, but we are not sure how to contact who will be looking. But so long as our proposal is really more useful, will have an impact. So you can see that different people come up with requirements, which is not in the stipulated science and technology, but there's something related to another areas again. So maybe in this category, if any of you have any, they give research grants for individuals is also there. So maybe you can look at in terms of what are the grants which is there, and then you can see in terms of whether we can apply for the any of these things. So I think we need also to explore what we are and what will be appropriate, and try out what will be more suitable for you. I think this is something which we need to look at. Okay, then one more thing which I thought is, this is all some, see, government agencies are there, but then we try it out. But still, over and above that, you can try with small minor projects initially. And so normally I would say that you cannot have projects every year, but at least try at least one project every 3 years. I think you keep a goal like this, no? Okay, I must at any point in time, I must have one project ongoing. I think that gradually you start finding that you'll be able to keep doing something. And your research also, sometimes whether it's for data collection or conducting a survey or even buying some data, I think for all these things also sometimes these fundings are useful. So in that sense, and maybe you can also hire somebody to help you also to assist you. Maybe your research students can also employ them and pay them additionally a give a top-up grant for the fellowship that they're getting through the project, and that way it will also help you to do some more good quality research. And this is something, it's a continuous process, not that once I do today and then we can sleep over it. I think as long as we are a teacher, I think as a faculty, I think we need to look at it in terms of getting some projects or the other. And getting a project every year is, and if any organization or the university says you have to get a project every year, that's actually impractical. It's not possible at all. So it's important that they also come up with some practical, realistic targets for you. You also keep a realistic target. So one is sometimes these type of agencies is one thing which you can do to begin with. It always helps you to get into the process of getting research funding to DC. Then other one is nowadays in recent times CSR projects are, companies have to spend certain specific companies. The cost of the Companies Act, it is mandatory that they have to spend at least 2% of the average net profit of the immediately preceding 3 financial years on CSR activities. So what are socially relevant and activities? They also come up with a set of things. I think if you have a good proposal which can be coming under any of these, coming up with some new idea, or trying to have some social impact, or something where sometimes people are more concerned about environment, governance, or something in terms of trying to inclusiveness. If you find that any of these things, you can even approach these type of organizations, and if they can give you a funding for these activities. Because companies also nowadays, this year I heard that several crores, nearly about 22,000 crores, have not been spent in CSR because they didn't get avenues to spend. So which means that I think we can target that big source of revenue, the source of funding available in terms of CSR. So maybe we can get approach the organizations and try to tap this so that they're convinced with the proposal. I'm sure that you can get that funding for doing project. I think this is something depending on the location where you are looking at the organization, that they identify those organizations, or even either the university or the institution can also help you to connect with the organizations in your location. And it can also look in terms of something where the institution itself tries to get some funding from the CSR. Sometimes companies give it to NGOs or some trusts, and the trusts are providing the funds also. So maybe you can look at those type of institutions also to get some funding, because there's sometimes you find that there's a big source of pool of funds that's available for use by us. And nowadays they say that I think the ministry also said it can be given to educational institutions for doing this type of R&D and projects also. So when that being the case, it's advantageous for us to try to tap this particular segment also. So I'm not, I mean, I'm just giving you a sample of where area institutions where you can apply for such proposals. But I think sometimes the question also comes in as, okay, I want to prepare a proposal. How do I ensure that the proposal gets through? So what are the points that I need to consider when I submit my proposal? Maybe so I thought I can share some points on those aspects also with you. Most important thing is maybe you can look at something in terms of some future directions again. So maybe the themes on which normally the call for proposals or which is being accepted are those which are where there's a lot of requirements in the future. So no point in you doing something which already is being done. So maybe it can be nowadays people are looking at more applied, there's a theoretical to apply to policy driven research. Maybe you can look in terms of some things to suit to you. And in my domain of finance, I thought nowadays a lot of changes are happening within financial reporting also. Nowadays it is becoming much more challenging in reporting using the IFRS standards. And of course the phase 1, phase 2 is happened also. So you can see in terms of what are the possible areas where we can work on that. And the responsibility of the auditors have actually increased. Earlier it is something that auditor signs and then but now he's also accountable, you're responsible also. So maybe you can look at some areas where you can look at for research. Of course, now what we find is whatever influence technology are getting integrated also. So you also can also see in terms of how this is having impact on technology. And behavioral finance again. Nowadays, technology is bringing a change in the attitude of investors. Maybe you can see in terms of can I come up with developing new behavioral models there. Startup is something in the recent 3 or 4 years, a lot of importance is being given. And there's a lot of scope for us also to do research. But one challenge is getting to get the data. But of course, still, there are a lot of issues on which you can work on. Can be on startup financing, marketing, selling, or management, etc. Also trying to see how the local community setup or the government setup can be connected to the startup or the new ventures they're doing. And I think many of nowadays, I think even colleges and universities started having their own entrepreneurship cell which tries to do it. So through that also you can try to see in terms of coming up with something new. And in recent times, I find that because of the concern over the environment and things and sustainability, I think a lot of work is also being done, and a lot of work is also yet to be done. So, something like green financing, climate financing. Apart from looking at scenario writing, can we do some empirical work in that, which will be useful in practice? I think we can look at in terms of specific issues on these dimensions that can be there. Of course, some of them again, I will still it's only some selective ones. Yeah, you can look at a lot of huge data is available nowadays. Data is available in plenty, and there's a lot of scope for doing some analytics also. Yeah, customer analytics, financial analytics, market related, or inform-related analytics can be done. And predictive and directive research is also giving a lot of importance in recent times. You can look at some problem areas in that. IT and mobile linked business models. See, the business models of the company, firms, or banks, or financial service institutions have changed. So maybe now we have to see in terms of what are the new business models. I think that itself will be a good thing to explore. And earlier it was B2C and it was now B2B also was there. Now it is more to C2C. A lot of customer to customer thinkings are there. So it is becoming, so changes are happening. Maybe you can focus on only one or two and then try to explore. I hope that you all do something in coming up new theories in financial product life cycle. So earlier it was always only India centric, but nowadays cross country impact is quite high. So it's important that we need to understand in terms of the integration of the markets and how it affects also. So we can look at on some of these issues. And ours is a very highly regulated economy. The strong one, I think one of the advantage why India is doing well in relation to UK or US now is because of the foundation of good strong regulations. I think strong regulations have made our economy more manageable and compared in a relative sense. So if you look at regulations in capital market, debt market, commodity market, mutual funds, market, infrastructure institution. So you find that plenty of them are there. And I think so there's a lot of scope for us also to look at and explore any of these things. And I would say that the best thing is also look at if you go to SEBI websites, if it's in Govt India website, there are a lot of working papers out there. So on all the emerging issues, they have a committee and they come up with a proposal and ask the public also to come up with any feedback. So if any of you are working in the area of markets, I think I would suggest that go to the Security Exchange Board of India website, look at their working papers for which they are discussion papers, which they are for which they invite suggestions and opinions. These are areas which are emerging. So if you want to find out what is new and where to work on, I think it will also give you a clue. Okay, these are some issues that they are looking at. So let us also try to start exploring. So that will be a good thing to look at. Well, there's a lot of scope also in financial planning and wealth management. I think a lot of awareness is being created on planning, and we also see that financial planners also become more. But there's a lot of scope for research also in that because not many people are not doing much work in this area in terms of research. And in India, the real estate financing is also becoming popular now. Earlier, it was not there. If you look at in US market and all, they used to be very popularly is the real estate markets and real estate financing. But here in India, it is emerging and there's a lot of scope for you. And I think one of the important reasons for strength for India is increasing FDI, both at state level and industry level. It also opens up a lot of areas for us to look at for research. And I think a lot of work is being done in the area of corporate governance, but still a lot of new things are also there. We need to find out what something new, what other current issues are there, and then look at in terms of areas related to governance. And another theme I thought is fintech. Fintech is is gaining a lot of importance in recent times, and we can also see in terms of how the fintech development and things are having impact on firms, on the markets, and the economy. I think this is another area which you can look at. Cyber security is gaining a lot of preventing frauds and surveillance in finance and banking. I think this is gaining a lot of momentum with the use of more of technology-based processing of transactions. So maybe I think that is also another area too. So when it comes to financial markets and regulations, I thought maybe you can look at the Reserve Bank of India website, Security Exchange Board of India website, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and also see in terms of what are the guidelines for what new changes have happened in the context of each of the segments is different. For example, in RBI, they come up with money market, government securities market, forex market, and banking is there. So maybe you need to understand the changes and new things. Look at the annual reports, look at the challenges that they are trying to focus on. Look at the new talks or shares that normally they share the expert stocks also. Maybe sometimes they also provide some lot of insight in terms of what the emerging issues there. So if you're looking at some potential areas, new areas, I think you should look at definitely, particularly if you're working in the area of finance or economics, I think you should look at RBI. And I said SEBI is also another one. They have various domains. See, they focus on guidance for the equity market And they have various subdivisions. They're looking at public issue, buyback, disclosure, SME IPOs, acquisition takeovers, intermediaries. So look at in terms of these. Then corporate bond market, then hybrid market is alternative investment funds. They have commodity derivatives, currency derivatives, market infrastructure institutions. They are also coming up with a lot of guidelines for today. They also come up with guidelines on governance, reporting, compliance. So maybe you can also look at the discussion papers and things, reports that are coming in these, and then try to see in terms of what you can do in those areas. Ministry of Corporate Affairs also come up with frequent changes. I think they also give some funding also. Ministry of Corporate have to call for papers for research funding periodically. I think they give a small grant, 10 lakhs. I think that 10 to 15 lakhs. So maybe you can also try to see if we have any relevant related to companies and based on it's going to be linked to the regulations, whether it is on raising funds or on governance, on valuation. And nowadays we have this insolvency board, IBBI is also there. So not much work has been done on that. So maybe you can also look at in terms of what are the issues pertaining to IBBI related activities, and then you can also focus on those things when you apply for projects. Again. Of course, this I think I already mentioned here, but of course, all markets, a lot of challenges, scope is there for you to identify new areas and all these segments. The equity market, bond market, mutual funds, foreign portfolio investments, market derivatives is there. And the most interesting thing is market, like see nowadays regulations pertaining to stock exchanges is gaining a lot of momentum. Particularly after the co-location case, I think a lot of thought is also into this one. They come up with a lot of limits and norms for people who are operating in the market. So maybe it's good to look at these domains for you to identify some emerging new areas for you for research. So another major challenge is, I think, this is something which you can think of what will be of interest to you and identify the emerging areas. The point I wanted to remember is it's important that you look at in terms of choose an area of interest to you and keep building on that, and then please understand what is happening in it, both in terms of theoretical development, the regulatory development, and what are the practical things, what's happening in the industry pertaining to that. So moment we have a strong base on this, then in that case, trying to keep working on that and trying to build and identifying issues will become easier. So identifying a research problem, sometimes I feel the people say, okay, this is the problem, and next day I see many of them start getting into data collection. I think such research is of no use at all. People want quick results. I know that nowadays people want instant results, like immediate delivery by this Swiggy and this one. I think we want immediate results, immediate output also. But research is very slow. And we need to have patience also. So most important thing is identify and understand the problem. I think you need to spend a lot of time in choosing and identifying the research issue. I think that's the most important thing that I feel that we should look into. So I thought I'll just spend a few minutes also on how to choose key issues for research. Before I proceed on this, maybe I just take up a few questions from you and then try to proceed. Is it fine? Can I have some questions from you?
I can see two things. Dr. Pankaj Saini wanted to ask a question. Can you please ask your question? Dr. Pankaj Saini, can you enable your mic and your video and then ask a question, please? Are you there, Dr. Pankaj? Okay, can we have Dr. Bhavna ask a question, please? Can you please open your mic and your video?
Good morning, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
Ma'am, firstly, thank you for giving all the insights. Secondly, you have focused on, collaborating for these research proposals. So one will be the PI, one will be the co-PI. So how does, credentials are given to the, institutes from where the people are coming from. Like if PI is from other institute, so who shall be the grant shall be given to the PI, I believe.
Normally, the grant is given to the PI institution. If there are two institutions, the grant will be given there, and then from that institution, you ask for PI, they can provide you some funds.
So a
So
credential will be given to that particular institute only.
Yeah, but because it's always based on PI only, they'll be taking it out. The first principal investigator. The other details may not be there. So, but of course, you can also say that when it's going to be shared, you can also show that it is partly funded, and then you can get the funds, part of the funds transferred to your institution. So, but that should be clear at the beginning when you're putting the proposal itself. You can also make those things clear, so that it becomes easy for you to get the funds also transferred. But I think the granting institution normally gives only to the institution which belongs to the PI. And then later
Thank
on,
you
it
so
is
much.
between that institution and the other institution.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is it clear? Is it fine?
Are there any other questions? You can please raise your hand and we can ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Please raise your hand. Dr. Saini, are you there? You can ask your question because I did see a hand raised earlier. Okay, I believe there are no more questions at the moment, so we'll take questions at the end in that. Yes. So, Professor Thenmozhi, you can continue with your presentation.
I'm just coming to how to look at in terms of identifying key issue for research. I think most important thing is I think you can also look at in terms of there any current need for a solution, some burning issue for which I want to find an answer. I think if you can choose such type of themes, I think immediately you find that it attracts the reviewers and the panel experts also, and they're more keen to even to consider your proposal favorably. So maybe something is there a current need for a solution or something the change is warranting a new approach. Something is already there, but then now you have seen in terms of what should I do. I think these are very easy to say, but then depending on the area of your interest, you may have to find out in terms of what the issues are. And most important thing is when you are coming up with the research question in your proposal, please ensure that you link the theory to the existing research. So, and then bring out the gap clearly. Because sometimes people always say, no, nobody has done it, but we know a lot of work has already been done. Then in that case, it doesn't interest the experts also. So it's important that before you give a proposal, also, yes, it is it's an emerging area. There's a lot of need for it, but then what type of work has been done and what has not been done? And I'm trying to tap this. If you can bring out that clearly, then it makes it easier for you to position your proposal effectively. And again, you also not link it to the existing theory. If there's any underlying theory on the basis of which you're doing it, it gives you a big boost also because there is a basis, grounding on basis of which you're coming up with your research questions. So I think maybe this is something that's an important thing which normally we look for when any proposals come in. So when you choose a topic, I think the most important factor that's normally considered even while reviewing is originality or the innovation. So how can I position my proposal? Can I bring out what is this newness? Of course, in our area, what is newness? We are not a science and engineering, we belong to the management or the commerce domain. Then in that case, how do I come up with innovation here? Is innovation maybe in coming up with your objective itself, something new? It can be either coming up with a new methodology or coming up with a new theory or a new model. So maybe if you can highlight and bring out how this is changing, I'm sure that will also help you to. But of course, people say, okay, I am doing it for India. Nobody has done for India. I think that is not originality. I think there are less chances for you to get the funding simply by saying that we are doing it for India and compared to it has not been done in our country. Yeah? Unless until something is really very unique to me. I think it doesn't sell. The proposal doesn't get well. And also, if you're trying to replicate an existing work, I think that I put a question mark because it depends on what is it. Sometimes, see, you're coming with a new thing now. And then in that case, maybe then if something is emerging, new guideline is coming, new rules have come in. So maybe you wanted to see in terms of what is the effectiveness. Their replication of existing work done elsewhere may be accepted. Otherwise, people will not accept this one because it's already been done. Already known how do you think it's going to be different here in India. And it may not, be able to position work. So it's important that to look at these things. And also you have to look at the appropriateness and application of the methodology. So whatever your research questions are, you try to choose the relevant methodology. I think that's more important, and they try to bring out in terms of what will be the significance and implications for theory and practice. Because all these things may have to be given in your proposal. So the most important thing is, if you have clarity on these things, then in that case, writing a proposal, whatever may be the format you can, because all these things will be common. So you need to first work on these things so that you can try to apply for the proposal. Sometimes it's also good that you choose an area, but then you're not sure in terms of what is new there. Maybe you look at in terms of to understand. I think I would suggest that you read more research papers also, so that you get familiarized in terms of how they are. Particularly, choose the best quality papers. Take the highly strong in your area, in your domain, whether it's marketing or finance or HR. Choose the best journals, the top 5 journals that you choose in your area, and read those papers there. I think that will be give you because the standard will be very high, and that will also give you clarity in terms of which are really very good, robust methodologies. So I think that is something which I advise young researchers to look at. And also sometimes you also look at it as, okay, I'm not only this, if you want to specialize in the area and then you want to keep doing more and more research, choose some areas which will be relevant for. Sometimes you can choose one for purpose of submitting the proposal, but then afterwards the thing will not be relevant. Okay, COVID, impact of COVID, I can do one paper, then afterwards what do? I cannot be a specialist in that. No? I need this. COVID is a situation, the timing only. So your research has to be on something like the markets or in terms of the investor behavior, or it has to be in terms of buying intentions or what it is. So focus on the area which will be relevant for you rather than your context or the sample itself. Then in that case, I think you can do a lot of work. Multiple research proposals can be prepared also, and it can keep growing. Next time when you want to prepare, since you have already done some groundwork, it becomes easy for you to prepare a proposal. Otherwise, what happens for every new topic, you have to do the foundation, read the theory, understand the theoretical base, understand the regulation, understand what is existing research, and then come up with a gap. It takes more time also. So, as I said, you can be an expert if you start focusing on one broad area and keep doing that. So, you can say that in that area, okay, whatever work has been done, whatever area I'm very thorough. So, you try to choose one area for each one of them. I think that's very important. I think it helps in the long run also. And then when you read the papers, I would say that it's better that you try to do a critical review of the papers. It's very important that you need to. Just one is reading the paper, summarizing it, but how do I do it critically? Okay, start questioning them. Why should they do this? Is it really important? Are they really contributing to the existing research? Is it something new? What is the newness from that of the previous research? Is there newness in terms of the problem, or is it in terms of the methodology, or in terms of the approach, or it is in terms of the situation in which they are doing it? What is new? And also see whether it has been done effectively, how it could have been done better. I think this type of critical reviewing is something which we need to develop, so that you will always know in terms of that will also give you ideas and to come up with something new. That is, identifying the research gap is dependent on how you are reviewing the work critically. And also, maybe the need for a new theory or because there's a gap in the literature. So another thing is I talk in terms of originality, but originality cannot be 100%. See, sometimes what we do is we try to do a small percentage change in the existing one. So even if 10% originality is there, it's a great thing in our field. It's not like science, and where you can always come with completely new. So see, in terms of what is the 10% originality that I can bring in the work. I think that will also help you to position and title and focus your research proposal also. And most important thing is whatever you're doing, will you implement and take decisions based on your study after doing it? I think that will, if you start asking this question, your proposal will become more robust also. So maybe what you can look at is, yes, try to ensure that the work is, there is a clear definition of the research question or the problem. There is clarity in terms of implications for practice. The quality of data is quite high. And there's rigor in methodology. And they use appropriate one. I think sometimes people have a fancy. They will use all 10, 20 techniques as though the thesis is on techniques. No. Use one technique which is appropriate for your problem. That's enough. So what is important is we look at in terms of whether the technique used is relevant and is appropriate and serves the purpose. I think that should be the purpose. And also look at in terms of what will be the contribution to research and in terms of either in terms of innovation and newness that you do. Okay, maybe I will just do one thing. Now I'll give you a 5 minutes break and then we'll just continue. Is it fine?
I think we can take a 5 minutes break and then we can come back.
Yeah.
Sure. In the meanwhile, if anybody has questions, they can note it down and then we can take it after 5 minutes.
Yeah, meanwhile, we take this opportunity to make an announcement. PhD admissions are open for BVIMR and other constituent unit of BVDU. So we request you humbly to share and apply for the same. The last date of submission of PhD admission forms are 30th of June. The exam will be conducted in 9th of July. The syllabus will be UGC net. If there is any query, the questions are welcome. Thanks. Yeah, there is another announcement. Tomorrow's link will be the same as today, so kindly note and record. Thanks.
So shall we start again? Yeah.
Yeah, sure, we can.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a nice picture cartoon which I thought I see is interesting. Look in terms of high quality research and then looking in terms of what is low quality research. See here, when the apple falls here, the way it's thinking is different from that of where the other person thinking. Oranges also follow the law of gravity, but whereas there comes up the new theory. So I think that's the difference. I think it's all in our thinking, the way in which you look at things and then, how you try to perceive. I think that makes a lot of difference. So it is not that what I sometimes I feel is whenever even I visit the for these type of impact decisions, many of them have a lot of potential, but people don't try. Let me do something very simple and easier. I think it's nothing wrong in making a try to do something different. And as I said, it cannot be 100% new, but we can try with that 1% change. 1% new is what we can bring. And then gradually, when you start doing it, then in that case, I think you start enjoying doing it. So research is something I think you cannot force anybody to do it. If it is being compelled by rule, I think nobody will do research. See, one should have that interest. So it is for us to either, you cannot expect somebody to motivate you also. So there must be some motivation from inside within ourselves. We have to think in terms of doing it. Unless and until we are determined, I don't think it will be possible for you to do research. So I request that each one of you just think, yes, always try something new. It is possible. It's difficult. But one important challenge that we face is that this is very difficult. It's not easy also. But everything is difficult before we try, isn't it? So in that sense, the moment, though it is difficult, the moment you try and get used to it, and once you start working on it, it becomes easier. So day one, it will be difficult, but I'm sure in about 6 months, it will become slightly better. And then 1 year, you find that the whole thing is much more simpler and manageable also. So I'm sure that each one of you can try and think of something new and then try to identify some new issues for research also. And for choosing the right topic, as again, a few more topics is that I think is just to reinforce it. I think it's one is you need to have a foundation of research. You need to build I spend a lot of time in choosing and identifying the research problem. The foundation is there, and then in that case, afterwards everything will become easy. 50% of your research is done provided you have identified the research issue, right issue, and you understood it well. But then every day we keep moving towards improving on it. So keep reading continuously. Look in terms of, can I have a strong theoretical framework relating to whatever the area of domain that I want to work on? Okay, if it is going to be governance, I need to be clear about all the governance theories, what are the fundamentals, what is the rationale, and why it has been done, then what is the guidelines, and also see in terms of what is the literature available here, whatever work has been done in other countries and what has been done in India, and what are the findings which are really contradictory and you think that there's something new, is there any gap, is there? Review that. I always say again, whatever you're doing, try to ensure that there is some scope. It should be. See, if the outcome is going to be used only for now, it's going to be a project. It's like an MBA project. But if the outcome is going to always be useful, then in that case, it becomes more significant. So you must also choose the theme which will be relevant also. That's very important. I think also, yeah, if you have any questions? I guess.
I don't think there is anybody who's raised a hand as well.
Okay, fine.
I would like to know, Professor Thenmozhi, what happens is usually the research that comes from many of the IITs or many of the IIMs is very strong in terms of application based and also in terms of the research methodology. So what happens is a lot of times, even if there is a great idea that may come from other institutions, what lacks is the scientific approach to the problem. So how do you really build, and what particular references should you really take? Because a lot of times when one reads statistics or one reads econometrics, one doesn't really come with very specific research inputs. I do understand that when you read journals like the top journals and you read good articles, they do identify somewhere or the other the methodology that they have used. But again, when you read them, they don't give you the specific methodology or the way they actually brought. Could you please mute the mics of the audience? Shweta, can you please check if the audience mic is muted? Okay. Usually what happens is when we are trying to work on them, we may not have the access to the requisite, the authors we are wanting to, let's say, reach out to, or the others, and the methodology somehow doesn't, it's not very easy to reach out. So what would be your suggestion specifically to guide research proposals that should look at fine research methodology, because that is the strongest pillar of any scientific research, as I understand, uh, for any generalizations or anything. So how would you like to suggest that people should go through and understand what process they should adopt? Your mic is muted, so if you can please unmute your mic. Could you please unmute Professor Thenmozhi's mic? Shweta? Shweta, can you please unmute Professor Thenmozhi's mic? Her mic is not enabled.
She has to unmute herself.
Professor Thenmozhi, you will have to unmute your mic. Your mic is not enabled. Professor Thenmozhi, you will have to unmute your mic. We can't hear you. If you see, there would be a small box that will be coming in your window, which would ask you to unmute your mic. Yeah. Now we can hear you. Perfect.
I'm unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you, Shweta.
So the most important thing that we always see is one is, I think when it comes to research, we need to build a skill set on three different things. One is what is the appropriate research methodology? Understand in terms of how to do a good research, the research process, building our knowledge onto us, that in general. I think that is something which we have to focus. Second is, nowadays the techniques and methodologies are also very important. And we need to understand what they are, and then when to use it and how to use it, and how to interpret it also. The challenge becomes is nowadays, I still remember initially I used to do only some simple statistics, then it became multivariate statistics. Then I started looking at simple econometrics. Now it is going on into more financial econometrics. Then now it's going into AI, other things. So you find that the techniques also are evolving. And every time you go to SPSS or to your EViews or to the Stata database packages, you find that a lot of new techniques are there. Nowadays, a lot of applications are also. So in that sense, I think second thing which every researcher need to strengthen is see in terms of how do I try to strengthen my knowledge and the approaches also. So the best thing is to read the relevant books which talk about those approaches or techniques, and also looking for some few examples of where they have been applied and how they've interpreted it also. So they'll give the context in which they have done, and then see in terms of how to do it. Experiment with, try with some textbook data, problems or data to understand the technique, and then you try to apply it to the research. So in that sense, then it becomes easier for you to try it. But sometimes we also evolve, learn. For example, I just remember when I was learning all this ARIMA modeling or the GARCH model for measuring volatility. Sometimes we got results and we are not sure. We are at that point, but suddenly we are not very clear because, as you say, no paper, no book tells you exactly how it should be applied, when to apply, and when to interpret, how to interpret. Very few, but of course, in the case of statistics, I always like this Heron Anderson book on multivariate statistics, because that book, which will always tell you in terms of every multivariate technique, it will also give you some examples of papers where they've used it, and also take one example and interpret it also. So sometimes there are some, for multivariate stats, that's a very good one, which including structural equation modeling, all these things, everything is covered there, cluster analysis, factor analysis, discriminant analysis. When it comes to econometrics, sometimes see the problem, sometimes I feel, it's basically not from economics, but we are basically on economics. But still becomes very mathematical. Sometimes most of the techniques are very, very mathematical. So sometimes it looks like Greek and Latin. So first thing I always do is first try to understand what this technique is, why they are using it, what are the assumptions of the technique, under what circumstances you should use this one. And then I try to convert the whole methodology in my language, the way in which I wanted to put it, rather than the mathematical part. I try to take some examples and then try to understand and then put it in my language. So that, of course, I also teach this sometimes later to my students. So I converted it to my language and then I started. And I also focus on interpreting it. How do I interpret it? Where do I get it? What are the limitations that are there? And if we get certain types of results, what we should do. So I think it's something it evolves. It doesn't happen immediately. It takes a lot of time. And every time when I go to class, even for now, I think there's something new that is there, new approach, new technique is there. And we learn. So sometimes it takes 6 months to 1 year to understand the methodology itself. To apply it. But it is good. In the process, we are also growing and we tend to know in terms of where and how we can apply. Earlier, it was only simple panel regression. Now you do only one technique and do the analysis. But nowadays, everybody says, where is the validity? Where is the robustness? What type of test of robustness you have done? And they come up, the requirements are so much. They say, okay, if you want to really apply it, you have to ensure that it is really valid. So a lot of new approaches and new methods are also coming up for that also. Still, I won't say I know everything, but I know some of them. So it is something that we keep building up. So apart from the research methodology, even when it comes to my research students, we always, I train them on three things. First, I will ask them to read all the books in research methodology, understand topics, them, and then take one paper and then see how it has been used relating to the concept, whether it is a research design, whether it is a development of hypothesis, or whether it's choosing a sample, or whether in terms of defining the limitations of the study, scope of the study, in terms of data collection, in terms of how they arrive at the sampling methodology, and how they make a choice of the technique. So in the process, whatever methodology that they learn, theoretical base, they also see in terms of some work is already been done. So that gives them some clarity. This is one thing we do. Second is in all these techniques, I begin from basic techniques like descriptive stats. See, we all know to calculate given a problem, but we don't know how to do it in research. So it's more important that I ask them choose a technique, understand what the technique is for, and how do we interpret when to use it, what are the assumptions, and then how to interpret the results, and take a research where they've applied it and how they have done it. So this is something they have to do for each and every technique. So I begin with descriptives, correlation, regression, multiple regression, then I go to other models, all multivariate, then I go to econometrics, so everything. So in the process, it takes about more than a year. So for them to understand all the techniques, because we don't know what we'll use for the work, but we must have a understanding of all the basic fundamentals. Then later on they can pick up. So this is something initially required, and then I ask them also try it out with some data in the packages also. They have to try it out with actual data, take the results, and then interpret it also. So in the process, you get answer. Then the third thing is I also ask them to look at understanding all the theories in the area. For example, I offer a course for empirical research in finance. And we take all the classical papers right from the agency theory, capital structure related theories, we begin with Modigliani, Lindas, etc. Their own contributing papers. And those papers they have to read and then present and discuss it. So we'll just identify in capital structure, then in terms of the dividend theory, then look at in terms of markets, particularly relating to pricing in capital asset pricing model, this one. Then options pricing. We also look at in terms both corporate finance related theories, market related theories. We identify the base fundamental papers. They have to definitely read it. And then we also sometimes ask them to look in terms of there any review that has been done, where we also come up with what are the pros and cons of those theories also, and how the way they have been used for research. So see, everybody will get a PhD in finance, but then they need to, it's not that they're not getting a PhD in the topic, it's going to be in the area. So we want them to have a strong theoretical base. So we ask them to go through all these papers, review, and then present it and discuss it in class. And so that they get to know all the various fundamental theories. So I think this is something which we offer it over a period of time. And they also need to do identify a paper where they just use a theory, and then choose a paper where the theory has been proven to be true, and another group we ask them to choose a paper where the theory has been proven to be false. And we ask them to debate in the class as to whether the theory is true or false and why. So in the process, they get some clarity on that. It's not just reading what the theory and then explaining it, but you must also more critically look at the thing, how the theory has been used in practice. So these are some. So we focus on these three things as a foundation. The first 2 years, I think we are sure that scholars do it. At the end of this, we also make them do a literature review and come up with an SLR. So in the process, that also helps them to choose their research issue. So I think this is what I normally do for the research students. So that the foundation is strong, then whatever may be the theme on which they are working on, they can build it on and then they can do it. And I think we need to spend more time on the foundation rather than straight away just choosing a topic cannot be done in a day. You can choose an area also, maybe choosing a topic it takes time. So we need to have clarity in all these things. Then in that case, and of course you choose something and then start specifically working on it and then build on it and then coming for this 10% originality. I think that takes more time because many times my students used to come and say, "Oh man, nobody has done it. I am going to do this." I said, "Fine, okay, go ahead." I said, "Okay, can just try to find out what work has been done, what is not being done. Let us try to look at it." And then after about 3-4 months, they come up with saying, "No, they have done this. They have already found out this. This is what has been done." So another thing is, if it is just to the industry or to the thing, it's always important to go and talk. Nowadays, people like to do research by just by sitting before the system. They don't want to go out, don't want to meet people, whether it is investors or whether it is a company or whether it is a regulator. I think we need to have discussion because the way things are happening, and that perspective will also can give them fine tuning of the research issue. So but then it's not easy to get that connect also, but it is important. You go talk to a few people. Something is going related in the corporate finance area. It is important that you talk about the issue to any few finance managers, and then say we are trying to look at this. Do you think it will be useful? Do you think it will have an impact? And we found, or sometimes even you find something, go and talk to them also and find out. And we are finding this. Why do you think it is like this? Why do you think this factor is not at all being considered in determining the IP or pricing? So can we go talk? We have to go and talk also to that. So this is what I've been doing, and this is my approach. I'm sure that each one will evolve what will be most suitable also. But when I look in terms of what I do with my research students when they're doing it, I think we try to ensure that apart from doing some coursework, they need to strengthen both on the analytics, the techniques part, then research methodology skill. Another one is literature. Understand all the underlying theories in that particular domain. Finance domain, economics domain, HR domain, the marketing domain. You need to be thorough in all the underlying theories. Similar, I think in every domain we do that. In our department, we have an empirical research course in HR, we have empirical research course in marketing. I think so that the scholars need to understand. We will give them a strong base before they proceed with the research. This is something which we do so that it ensures that when they do the research, it will be better. I hope I was able to answer some. question that you asked.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think I understand that most of the things need to be followed on in terms of the right process and understanding the way we go about doing it in terms of learning from uh, one one particular base to another base would be the key. So thank you so much for your answer.
When we do this, I think it's also important to find out what is a niche, what is that is going to make a difference. Maybe the topic or the model or the approach. So sometimes it's very difficult to identify a new topic also. Maybe so one thing is be open. I think we should be open also. What I found is we may start with something in one area, but then actually what we do may end up with something different, totally unrelated also. I think it is because it is also the research issues or topics also evolves. Straight away, you're not sure in terms of what we want to do, and then gradually evolves in proposal. That's why even when you're preparing a proposal, we should have done some groundwork. Then only we can prepare the proposal. Otherwise, it becomes too difficult. And of course, it's also good that you can take some inputs from others also. You prepare it, and I said, connect with the relevant people or some experts. And it's always good to have some expert solutions. So I think that sometimes helps to strengthen the issue also. That's something is very important. So when it comes to the topic, some of the things that you see, sometimes the title is very important. The topic that you're going to do, and when you're presenting in a proposal, also sometimes it's very important. Whether even in the case of a publication, also I always sometimes the way you title also matters. Sometimes good work because the title is not correct, it will simply be disrejected. And I've seen this many times. So when it comes to proposal, I know sometimes the title is totally different from that of the topic that's given in the paper. And later I have found that project was also funded. So I was wondering, okay, I think that they made the title so very catchy that actually it made the experts think that is something totally different. And in the content, sometimes I find the explanation is not correct, but still it got approved later when I see the proposals here. So I think it's very important the way you title the topic also. If you're too familiar, it doesn't matter. Too mature also, I think people know. At the same time, it should be understandable, and at the same time, also say that something is unique. It's different. I think if you can spend time on trying to position and try doing the topic, I think that would be different. And of course, you can have some self-check questions like, does a topic test to build or extend a theory? Is it adding to the previous knowledge or coming up with a new direction? Are we contributing theory or develop a theory or test the relevance of the theory? Is it focusing on a unique problem or explaining a new concept, new measurement, new methodology, or new application? So I think if we can start questioning these things, I think we'll also know in terms of what is the work and how we can position the work also. And this, I'll always request that you bring it in the first paragraph of your. See, in any proposal, if you're not able to convince the reader in the first 5 minutes, the proposal doesn't get through. So it is important for you to position it in such a way that you are going to be able to bring an impact on the reader's mind. And these factors should be highlighted at the beginning. Sometimes, gone are the days where you write a 30-page proposal. Keep on writing, and after about the 10th or the 11th page, you write in terms of what you're going to do. I think nobody looks at it. It's very difficult because it gets missed off. That's what I find. By the time they keep reading, they lose track of what you are writing, and then they don't understand it. It's just to be precise. Nowadays, people don't want long proposals. They're crisp, short. If you want any details, you give an annexure. So make your proposal which is more very specific and clear. But then if you want any additional information, put it in annexure for additional variable. So that can be the focus and things are much more clear here. So maybe you can also look at the important relevance, data availability. See, when you're looking at in terms of any research, I always feel also is Is it really important? Is it relevant also? And look at data. And I think being in the finance domain, one of the biggest challenge is getting the data. So what are the particularly we are dependent on secondary sources? Is it available or is it going to be paid? And that means is it available in the form that we want it, or do we have to manually collect it? Sometimes that also may determine whether I can go ahead with it or not. And sometimes, of course, we are doing this is not only for the purpose of getting a funding, but you also want to publish it. Be clear in terms of what is going to be a target journal. Sometimes it's good to choose a target journal and then try to evolve the research issue and focusing on that also. It helps you to go in a particular way. The process of the journey will also be much more. And of course, if they want to evolve a theory or empirical, I think that depends on the problem. You can make a choice. I think common reasons why funding agency reject the proposals are: one is lack of originality. The newness is not very obvious or clear. People say, no, I am doing new, but then you must be able to convince the expert that this is something new. If you're not able to do that, then it gets lost. And lack of theoretical rationale or poor framing of problem. I think it's important that you have to convince the expert, the reader, that this is a critical issue on which we need to do research on. I think that style of writing is something which I would suggest you to follow. And sometimes there's a mismatch between research question and the research design. They say something in the research issue, but then what they're doing is totally opposite, different, not at all connected. Then in that case, it shows something like cut and paste, and then nothing is very clear. The researcher is not clear about what he's going to do, and then it doesn't get clear. Or sometimes people are not clear in terms of why and what they're going to do and how they're going to measure. That is something. Inappropriate, incomplete model specification, not linked to recent papers. Sometimes people say when you are referring and if it is 2023, if all the papers are 2008, 9, and nothing in the recent times of 2021, 22, I think which means that you are not current. You have not done your groundwork for the purpose of developing your research proposal. So it's important that you should ensure that the papers are recent. Of course, classic papers you need to set aside, but always ensure that you can relate to them, bring out the recent work that has been done in the area. Even it may be a report, something new. There may not be research papers, but then the reports will be there. So you have to bring it with the currency of the references, the context. I think that's very important. Of course, lack of completeness, clarity, and credibility is also another reason. Sometimes after reading it, you find that the researcher is running around and then not coming to what they really want to do. And one more thing which I always find is sometimes poor language and writing style. See, it may be a good problem, but if you don't present it well, then again that also gets good. So most important thing is also ensure that the writing style has to be proper, and also check the language of English. See, it's worthwhile. Prepare a draft and keep revising it every November. And it takes time also. There's nothing wrong in it. Even now, even when I prepare a proposal, I will revise it 5 to 10 times. It's okay. Because constantly you put in some thoughts, then you are not convinced, then try to improve on it, then try to say it. Then in last draft, you bring in the preciseness and then say, okay, this is the part I'm going to send it, and I don't send the full thing. So initially, it can be an exhaustive one because again, getting back and then trying to develop will be difficult. But then later on, you try to make it more precise. One more reason is sometimes it doesn't fit in the area in which they're calling for proposal. So sometimes the agencies are very particular. If we have called for proposal in these areas, if it doesn't match, then simply they reject. They don't even look at the proposal also. And another thing is a repetitive study. A lot of work has already been done, and you must also see the research issues on which they already funded. If it's any repetitive study, again, people do not encourage it. Goes up. They say, no, last year also we were doing a similar issue. Let us try to look at something new. So we must also look at in terms of what are the projects which they have funded in the last few years, so that you ensure that it is something different from what they've already been doing. And lack of depth also. I think, as you said, yes, the problem is there, but the reader is not finding enough depth. See, it is not important you must have some 5 to 6 different objectives. In one objective itself, I want to find out the effect of this, but then I also look at in the context of this, in the context of that, the context of that, and then add on the depth to the same issue. But people like to give 5 different objectives. No, not necessary. Take one and bring in depth into that. And then strengthen that one. I think that will be a very good thing to look at. For successful proposals, I think the one is titling. As I said, something the title is very, very important. That will help you to get your proposal through. So it should be very clear and specific, and it should also be descriptive of what you're doing. The uniqueness should come out higher clearly. Simple, precise, and clear in positioning the problem. I think that's one important. Need not be very complicated. People think that I must use. I know there is one person who said he used all words which I didn't understand what they are. And I said, no, man, I want to make it, but this is a bit complicated. I said, let it be complicated, but don't make it complicated for me to read itself. If I have to use the dictionary to understand every sentence, then I think something is wrong. Yes, you can put the problem, it may be a complicated issue, but let it be simple and precise and clear for the person to understand. Any expert will also looking for whether it is really clarity is there. Clarity in data, sample, and methodologies and everything. And I said, as I said, the depth is in analysis also. It's not just doing some technique, but there must be rational. And then, and also try to build on it. Yeah, I found the effect of this. Does it vary in respect to the presence of certain other factors? What other factors? So keep adding on to it. Relevant and related to theory and peer studies. I think that's another important one. Validate the approach also. You will also be clear as to why you're using the approach. What is the technique that what you're doing is correct. And then there is a clear implications of the study there. And normally the work, even if you say it's for 1 year or 6 months, I think it takes about 2 to 3 years for a solid work to happen here again. But we need to be patient. And I think only such, it takes time, but I think once we start doing it, I'm sure that after some time, it will become more easy for you to do it also. Maybe the last point, which I thought I was also, is in irrespective of the institution that you are in, I think maybe what is more important is you have to create a research culture. As I said, it's important that research culture is important. I think I did mention the first point, why research. All these things I did. Maybe what we need to do is look at in terms of having some research talk time. Sometimes I feel that this PPT should not be there. Amongst your colleagues, have a small chat on no equipment, no PPT, no papers, nothing. Have a research talk time and then discuss. Okay, maybe please find out that this once in a week. You have some cup of coffee and then have a chat. I think over a period of time, you start finding that you learn from each other and then we can work together also. Or sometimes you can take some inputs from others and then refine your things. One best way is also see, when I think in research institutions, we have this research seminar talks. Research seminar talks are where you present your proposal and take ideas from your colleagues. So maybe what you can do is you can send your proposal to your colleagues, ask them to read and come, and over lunch or something, you can have the discussion on that, take some inputs and refine it. And then maybe after a month, again, you work on that and then improve the proposal, again present it to them. So in the process, what we find is that we learn from each other and the research culture becomes more strengthened also. And when you see when this happens, in 2 to 3 years, you'll see there's a lot of change in the way you look at things, the way you handle it, the way you look at the issues and tackle it. And because I always say it's important that we must look at one new research, one new latest work that is being done in a week. Because if you stop reading, I think then again, we are not either building up our knowledge and we also become outdated. So it is important that we keep reading in one new research paper or a research output or something relevant to the particular area in which you are present. And sometimes it's also good to present your research area in conferences because conferences give you good feedback. I think even I work in finance conferences are very good where you get a feedback from various, from the experts and as well as from the reviewers also. So it is very good to get feedback also on various proposals. And some ways people think narrow. I am doing in finance, I don't look at any other research presentation. I think you must look at research being done in other areas in the field of management itself. Because they are all interrelated. Because nowadays, I think sometimes pure demarcation doesn't happen. No? That lot of overlap and interdisciplinary research is becoming very common. And you get a lot of new ideas also. It's very, very important. And so that way, I think we should attend presentations in other areas or related areas. And I always feel that many people, after some time now, because it's very difficult for me to read the physical newspaper, I will read the online newspaper. It's important to know what's happening every day. Being a management faculty in area of business or commerce, I think we should understand what's happening in the industry, in the packet sector. Maybe on newspaper, on magazine. I think it's very important that you need to continuously keep yourself updated. So do you know what's happening and what changes are happening? It may be in your own direct area of interest, but as well as to related ones also. It's very important. I just was looking at what they talk in terms of culture of research. They say a system of widely shared and strongly held values. I think that's the type of culture that every education institution should have. The more they focus on research, I think the institution will become more stronger and will become more well-known. The research culture is a structure that gives significance, that allows us to understand and evaluate the research activity. I think that is one thing. The culture that provides supportive context in which it is uniformly expected, discussed, produced, and valued. I think this is just to give you the scope of it, and I'm sure that each one of you can try to do that in your own organization. And initially, people may not be very forthcoming, but then once they see the results, I think maybe you can start with a small group and then gradually you find the people start expanding. You can create your own. Or if you find that this group is not coming up in your own institution or university, you can look at friends from other institutions also and form a group. And I think I'm sure that this will help you to develop a research culture and aptitude also. But of course, if some can also in decisive role, I think we should also look at. It's also important that many organizations, universities want the faculty to do good research, but they need to come up with some clear research goals, and the leadership should be such that it encourages it. Maybe provide some training or conduct some support program that is required. Create some research centers and give recognition for research outcomes here and encourage faculty collaboration. And also, responsibility should be balanced, teaching and research, because you cannot do research when there's a heavy teaching workload. Of course, sometimes financial rewards can also be thought of in that one, wherever required. Particularly, at least I know one university now, they started giving small research grants to meet the research expenses. You come up with a proposal and they started giving small research grants. I think that's really encouraging thing, and to ensure that people are able to do the good quality work. And it's also good to involve the students also. Apart from you can involve the students also. If there's research programs, then you can take on research scholars, or have some research assistants also to do it. And new policies, I think the institution should also think in terms of policies pertaining to research. So it brings in some clarity in terms of what it's expected. I think sometimes organizations want their faculty to do research, but then you need to create a culture. You need to create a system and process which enables the faculty to do more research. Many organizations, which I find is they measure the research outcome in terms of oneness, in terms of value of grants, and sometimes they give some research incentives are being given. And then also regularity, sometimes people give more importance to being a principal investigator and investigator than a co-investigator. So this keeps varying, but I think in the initial years, I think it's okay even if you're a co-investigator, but then gradually you have to move to become a principal investigator. And it's not only in terms of funded research, unfunded research also we can do. Every time when you apply, you don't get a grant. But doesn't mean the faculty is not doing research. Weight recognition could also be given for the unfunded research student. Quantity of publications, grants, and research presentations. So not only publishing and thing, but also the way you disseminate and make presentations and conferences and actively participate in different forums And even if you have not got the grant, if you have at least tried it out, I think these things have to be considered to evaluate the research outcomes there. Another most important thing in recent times is quality of publications. Look at in terms of the impact of the journals, whether it's in Q1 or Q2, or whether it is in ABDC, or if the Scopus index is higher. And the most important thing nowadays people look at is citation effects. So I request each one of you to have your own Google Scholar page. For Scopus also you have a separate page. You have IRIMS page. Also have your ResearchGate page where all your publications are all put up on one link. So I think in the process we find that people will be referring to your work. Unless and until you do that, the only when citations can happen. Otherwise, in our domain, citations are very small because it's not that very high. So we have to take some effort to try to put in these things and update it also. I know when Google Scholar sometimes extracts it by itself, but still you also ensure that whether all your conference papers and your publications are all linked there or not. I think it's important that you try to focus on these things. So maybe the goal is to try to work towards trying to improving the organization where you are from teaching subject to high quality research institution. And as individual faculty, I request that please focus on reading high quality research paper or a research report. Discuss a paper with a friend or another. Sometimes when you read, I think always it's important that the moment I start discussing with the paper, I get some more clarity. So I think we can try with these things. It really works well. And the focus, identify new issues which is relevant and it has some impact. And I don't expect anything to happen in 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. Take a step every day. Small steps. Every day, okay, at least I will spend at least half an hour today for research. Every day I must spend half an hour minimum. Whatever may be my workload. I think you do this, and when you look back later, you'll find that you move forward very far. And keep applying for projects, keep trying, and then we learn from experience. Straight away, it may not be successful, but don't give up. Okay, it has come back. Let's look at it in terms of okay, if it has come back somewhere, something is not correct. So whether it is in the title or in the clarity, whether it try to get some insight from others, some experts, and then try to improve on it, and then try to see how we can apply it again. So I think this is something which we need to do as an individual faculty. So I would say that in my experience, I think research is actually a very interesting thing to do, and I enjoy doing research. So initially, I never realized what I'm doing, but then over a period of time, I started doing that. The satisfaction that you get out of trying to find a solution, and if it is going to be really useful, I think nothing can match. So I think research is something we do for our own satisfaction. And I'm sure that each one of you will can try it out. I think many of you must be doing it already, but I think it's more to do with keep on doing it continuously. At any point in time, I must have some project and I must have some research work going on. So long as I am a faculty, I'm sure that I will keep doing research. Whether the organization or the institution wants me to do it or doesn't want me to do it, but I will keep doing it. I think that will only help you to grow. I think it's really good to look at things. And I would say that research is a passion. So if you have a passion towards it, I'm sure that you keep doing it. Irrespective of whether somebody appreciates it or not, whether you get a grant or not, you'll keep doing it. Another thing is research is a habit. You, as I said, you have to create a culture or create a habit for yourself as an individual. And if you just stop it, again, you need setup time, startup time, and then you lose confidence also. If you don't do it for some time, what I found is faculty members as faculty, we lose confidence. So it is important that you make research as a habit for yourself. So one way by which I try to do is I always have a weekly meeting with my faculty, with my scholars, and they have to make a presentation. They are different presentations. So I put in my timetable and schedule, I have that time definitely devoted for my presentation. The process, I also learn from that. I don't ask them to do on topics which I am comfortable with, but I also want them to look at new areas. And sometimes I don't know, and I also evolve and I learn and I keep growing. I think in the process, I think it's a good thing for us also to develop ourselves here. So focus on trying to create a research mindset and a culture here. And I tell you, keep doing research, and I think it's fun. So this is in short from me, from my experience here.
Thank you, Professor Thenmozhi. I think it was an excellent talk. We learned a lot. There is a question from Shweta. So Shweta, you can first ask a question and then I'll thank her. So please go ahead with your question, Shweta. We can't hear you, Shweta. There's something wrong with your internet connection. I think you can write it on the chat and then I can ask. Just put it on the chat box. Shweta, can you put your question on the chat box and then we can ask her for the answer?
Chat, can I just see it here? Yeah.
Are you typing?
Yes, ma'am.
In the meanwhile, I think Professor Thenmozhi, we feel very grateful for you to have delivered this talk because one of the strongest potential in research, and coming from you, how you do research and what you think about research is an important aspect for every one of us to understand. It is also very important that when we talk about things in terms of dealing with research, we feel that most of it comes naturally to us, but we do understand that research is a very slow and a gradual process to learn and accept what can be the different means of achieving a particular objective. I think a lot of us also understand that yes, if we repeat when we want to do research, we are mostly motivated by the idea of promotions or by the idea of being recognized in the sphere at a higher level, and that is why we take research. But a lot of times, research by itself also is indicative of the new extensions that you want to bring in. So when you presented your PPT and you actually focused upon a large set of ideas specifically as to how you pick up the research topic, how you pick up the titles, how you work on your literature review, how you work on your research methodology, I think each one of them was essentially very important. And also something which you very beautifully said was that the research must be contributory in nature, which basically means that when you do research, it must not be repetitive by itself, but definitely bring in some input or contribution to the reader or to the person who is actually wanting to go through your research. And that is why even research funding agencies would like to take up researches which do extend some contribution to that particular field or to the policy makers or to the others. I think another essential aspect which I do pick up from your research, uh, uh, have you lost Professor Thenmozhi? Is she there? Can anybody check if she's there? If, Shweta, can you check up with her on a call if she's there? Anyway, so
I think we lost one.
we lost her, I believe. Yeah. So I'll just ask. Power went off. Okay. I'm sorry. So she's saying that her power went off there, so there's probably an electricity issue. But I think when Professor research proposal, the agencies which are granting research grants, the way they go in terms of their guidelines, the eligibility that is required, everything clearly specified that we have to go through the guidelines very clearly before we go in for a proposal. And it's very important that we decide and choose our fields not only there. Another important giveaway from her side was that we don't stick to our disciplines, but do look at the other disciplines which can contribute and which we can learn from, which is also very important. Another important aspect is that we do understand that most things put people in place whereby we can understand and feel many things in place. So Professor Thenmozhi, we were just appreciating you since we lost you. We are still on the session, and I have taken you on the WhatsApp call so that I can fully acknowledge the beautiful presentation and the power that you had in the passion of presenting the research means that somebody should adopt for going forward as a researcher, not only for research funding agencies but also as a faculty. It's very important, I think, for all of us to recognize that we are in the teaching line, and we have a responsibility towards not only our profession but to our students and to the society to contribute intellectually and bring about a greater contribution to each field that we are working in, simultaneously encompassing from the other fields that we are taking in. I'm very thankful that you also talked about a research culture. We are very proud to say that, at BVIMR, we started something called a research cafe, whereby in that research cafe, what we do is we meet over a cup of tea or a coffee, and we discuss what different faculties are doing and what are the research ideas they're bringing about. We also started something called a research series, whereby we introduced many scholars who have done some work, and they would present their work to us. And we would ask them, what methodology, what data, what contribution have you brought, and what enthused you to do that. We also, accomplish a certain set of things in terms of getting research papers published. We got some views from the editors by making or doing a summit called the Editorial Conclave, where we received information from the editors as to what they are looking for in the papers. Like you beautifully said, that your topic should be innovative, it should be contributory, it should be an extension of certain works, and should, the beautiful cartoon that you said, a high quality research versus a low quality research, which is very important, because it is how original or how a keen observer can you be in terms of creating research. So I think 2 hours without stopping, you went on in giving us very beautiful insights into research. Many of the people on the chat have appreciated you. So I think they are there. I won't read that, but if your power goes on in, you can read that. They've said that it's a very informative session, it's a beautiful session, and they've been asking for your PPTs. So thank you once again for your beautiful insight, accepting our invite at BVIMR, for coming here. And we are very grateful. We will definitely want, we are trying to start something called a research mentorship program, where we would like to connect with professors like you, who would come and speak to our faculty and spend some time with them in guiding them into their research work. So with this, I thank you, and I thank all the participants for this beautiful, wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we take, on behalf of Research Cell, we take this opportunity to thank Professor Thenmozhi and all the participants for their wonderful contribution, patient listening. Some of the very critical aspect which she shared was how to create culture of research by taking research to the class and execution and creating it among the PhD scholars and the faculty members. So thank you so much, ma'am, for your very wonderful enlightened session. We give you a warm welcome for tomorrow's session. Kindly join us. The link will be same as today. Thank you all. Namaskar.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you. So we close the session. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.